Question. When Simmel meets Heidegger like two hippopotami, they collide? Question mark. But this collision wouldn't be the collision of beer barrels smashing and exploding. It would be the collision of metaphysics, or the final and most awesome statement on metaphysics, that of Simmel, which is defined as that metaphysics which is now currently in power, or which supersedes our being as a pre-nature which organizes the intelligibility of things. The common name for that is the fact-value distinction. So that's allows people to say that Wertfrei or value-free science stands on the one side and deals with facts, and that something else, the human being, somehow in another region, inaccessible to natural science, speaks of the worth, in Nietzsche's term, the esteeming, the values, the values such as are often mentioned in Supreme Court cases and decisions. These and these are the fundamental values of fundamental importance to human beings. For instance, in the marriage decision, Justice Kennedy said quite a bit about values in high language. So Heidegger doesn't deny metaphysics in a direct way, but he allows it to continue within his thinking, which means it's difficult to say at what point out of the current Dasein, which is absorbed in Simmel's account, which is at the same time the end of metaphysics, and which at the same time corresponds to what Heidegger calls the technological essence, or the current way Dasein is guiding itself. To fully be absorbed in that would be to be Sam Harris, or to be, in the older form, somebody like William James, or to be anywhere within the normal, or not even the normal, but within the political spectrum whatsoever, in ordinary people who have got from the ground up, education and fact-value distinction from preschool onward, probably from already in the home before any formal schooling occurred. That would be the norm. And then there's some people with specific training who have taught themselves to break from that view in one way or another. Heidegger's view presents all views which stand on the basis of a claim to alert attention, seizing upon something, and having it as an available concept, which is a generalization of some kind, such as a tree. From then, I can give definitions. I could say different things about it. I could posit other trees from it, think of that there'd be different species of trees. I have a specific kind of generalization. In physics, we have generalizations based on mathematics. We have different kinds of generalizations in different fields. The concept is seemingly one generator which is basically distinguished by saying this generator is not the subject matter itself, but that it can be somehow predicated of something. So there's something, and it is a tree. There's something, and for instance, there's a singular being, Socrates, at a particular time, but then he's also one specific instance of Socrates' idea, and is one instance of an animal, so far as we understand human beings as thinking animals, or thinking living beings. Heidegger claims that whenever we come into intelligibility of this sort, we're doing it by alerting ourselves to something, making it present, treating this thing as present, and we're coming out of the ready to hand, where we haven't, or in between stopping and making things, sort of stopping and staring at things in a way that reminds of the concept itself, or the idea of the thing, taken out of the what he calls the equipmental totality. But that's already, once we speak of the ready to hand and the presence to hand, we're already, this is the presence to hand would be metaphysics. The ready to hand, standing into connection to an old idea which we haven't clarified to ourselves how it stands now, is already, as it were, something we're supposed to be describing from the point of view of Dasein analysis, and therefore Heidegger could have gotten it wrong in that sense, or it might not have seen enough out of what's there, what's we've already seen, what we have so much before us to see already, such that we don't need to see anything new, but we only need to see, perhaps, see more of what's uncanny in what we are already accustomed to. This way of thinking of building a hermeneutic circle out of description is meant to say not just making it up, but somehow taking something from the phenomena of Dasein, which is supposed to be ourselves. On the one side, Simmel is standing as the final culmination of the philosophy which comes through Plato and comes through Talls, and has been built up over the millennia, and claiming this is eternal. So this is real knowledge, the distinction between the facts which the sciences produce and the values which come from, we don't know, from a magical place, or a place which can't be, is invisible from the point of view of the fact, and we don't actually know what it means that we should attempt to adduce it. And Heidegger is saying this is interpretation or intelligibility in such a way that just as language would seem to put being into a picture, as it were, that we could understand, intelligibility, which we give an example of what's meant by intelligibility, the cognito of Descartes, the cognito sum of Descartes, so that if at any time you say to yourself, this could be a dream, all the content of what would be in that dream, which means all the content of whatever you're saying at the time, counts as the cognito. So that's the and that's one way of understanding intelligibility. Intelligibility is a primarily vague notion, and everyone is in some way compelled to understand it or have it as intelligible on their own, in their own singular way, perhaps. So from this notion that intelligibility is not the same as the fount out of which all intelligibility comes, so to speak, out of the question, Heidegger can then speak of denken or thinking as different from being. And presence as a whole then is this intelligibility, but Heidegger always tries to give more and more avenues of invasion into something which has both presence, which is, say, the current field of intelligibility, but also sets it not, so we should notice, not in the nish tet or the nothing nothings, because the nothing nothings is also a currently intelligible part of the world, or the cognition, or the dream, or the intelligible, or the natural world of physics, however you want to generalize it and conceptualize it. It tries to say something that, strictly said, has to be seen and can't be pictured. Let's say that. Heidegger uses the old language of the eyes of the soul. It must be seen. And I'll give an example of something that must be seen, which is more common, which I gave in the last video. Infinity. Infinity doesn't actually name something that could be in any way put into a picture, but it simply must be seen, what's suggested by this notion of going on forever. These kind of notions somehow make a claim to be more basic than do most subject matter, which could be called concepts. So that there's a claim Heidegger is making to see something which is so compelling and has such a rescuing power for Dasein that Dasein cannot then, like Nietzsche would want to say, but this is merely one more form which emotion or the will is seeing into in such a way that it makes it into a deep well of riddles, which it then wants to get entrapped in, just as a girl wearing a locket with the picture of her beloved in it, but there's in fact no picture within it, or perhaps supposedly this is Christ in the locket, something which stands in the unapproachability, the unapproachable light, would be what Nietzsche tries to set aside when he says we don't need to be tief or deep or profound, like Isaiah Berlin says in an offhanded remark that when we speak of the profound, we must do it somehow on a metaphor with a well. You could see the moon reflected somewhere deep in the well, perhaps, on a clear night. This setting aside of the profound and of the riddles is supposed to direct us to, again, to this seeing of the most ordinary, but describing it in a way which hasn't yet been clearly framed, as it were, for us. So, for example, questions such as, if I speak of Martin Heidegger, who doesn't exist except maybe some dust or bones somewhere, but if I speak of Martin Heidegger not meaning the work named Heidegger, but meaning the man himself, am I representing something to myself? What Heidegger wants to say is, no, you're actually speaking about Heidegger. And so to make that more clear, I would analogize it. So then again, this is supposed to be a thought which is direct and described of the most banal reality in it, which is happening all the time, which is nothing deep or riddlesome, but it's just a direct description. When, for instance, in the example of they put GPS on house cats, and one of the house cats, when the family had gone away and several days had passed, it was seen to shoot out 2 miles in virtually a straight line, and it went directly toward the house that it used to live in, and then it shot back. How did it direct itself to that place? So how do we direct ourselves to anywhere? If I want to walk somewhere, I simply think of where I want to walk. And is that actually a representing of the place to myself? Heidegger says, no, that is the place itself that you're thinking of when you direct yourself to it. That is the being. So this kind of reflection is a form of primary ontology or ontologizing as a phenomenology, where phenomenology in a way is an empty word, which just means sort of we only look, we don't, it's a claim to only look and not be guided by dogma or guided by some kind of either a rule or a theory in advance that there's an object which we're describing, or a theory in advance that there's intelligibility in the normal sense of knowing something, and that the something has to be different from the knowing, so that there's an active thing and a passive thing, and the whole Greek metaphysics comes in. But instead, phenomenology is constantly kind of an exhortation, which Heidegger says doesn't even say go to the things itself. He says Husserl again made a dogma by saying that, by claiming there is a thing itself, but instead we're directing ourselves towards this wrestling with how it is as a question.